There's a saying that money doesn't matter, but when it comes to making movies, that's rarely true. Sci-fi especially gets expensive fast, and even then, you can still end up with something that feels cheap. The films in this list prove the opposite. This is low-budget sci-fi, and in one case, extremely low-budget sci-fi, where limited money wasn't a problem. A gorgeously crafted lo-fi sci-fi mystery set in 1950s New Mexico. The Vast of Night follows two young people, Faye Crocker and Everett Sloan, who stumble across a strange radio signal that may be of alien origin. The film makes striking use of its modest $700,000 budget, relying on evocative spoken dialogue to engage the audience's imagination. With the spirit of a radio play, it shows how high-concept sci-fi can work without heavy visual effects, using a small cast and fluid camera work instead. In Prospect, a teenage girl named C becomes stranded on an alien planet and, out of desperation, forms an uneasy alliance with Ezra, the man indirectly responsible for her father's death. Ezra is played by Pedro Pascal, who today feels almost unavoidable, but at the time hadn't yet become a familiar face in every other major release. Here, his character is far more restrained and morally slippery, and that ambiguity makes him genuinely interesting to watch. With a shoestring budget under $4 million, the special effects are kept to a minimum, but the film never feels like it's cutting corners. It compensates through subtle world building, a sharp script, and non-cliched characters. With a $5 million budget, Moon manages to be thoughtful and ambitious, while still remaining a sadly underrated sci-fi film. Sam Rockwell plays Sam Bell, who is nearing the end of a 3-year stint on the Moon as the lone caretaker of a mining base. His only companion is a computer called Gertie, and due to communication problems, he can only send recorded messages back to his family on Earth. When Sam discovers another human being trapped in a lunar vehicle, his chance of returning home is suddenly thrown into serious doubt. Aniara is a masterpiece. This Swedish sci-fi film stands head and shoulders above most Hollywood productions, despite working with a budget of roughly $2 million. The story follows the passengers of a luxury spacecraft who realize they've taken a wrong turn that may ultimately lead to their deaths. But rather than leaning on danger or action, Aniara finds its strongest moments in human interaction. It prioritizes ideas over effects, carefully examining human nature and leaving the viewer with far more to think about than most big-budget sci-fi ever attempts. One of the best found-footage movies ever made, Chronicle uses the setup of a superhero film, something that would normally cost 10 times as much, on a modest $12 million budget, only to slowly reveal itself as an origin story for a supervillain. 3 teenagers, Andrew, Matt, and Steve, gain superpowers after discovering a mysterious object in the woods. At first, they use their abilities for typical adolescent hijinks, pushing boundaries and having fun. But the story quickly takes a darker turn as Andrew begins to lash out at the people who have bullied and hurt him. Hardware is set in a cyberpunk future where scraps of a destroyed robot are uncovered in the desert and end up in the hands of Moses, who gives the mechanical remains to his sculptor girlfriend as material for her next art piece. What they don't realize at first is that the robot is a decommissioned government weapon, designed specifically for human eradication. Once brought inside the apartment, it slowly repairs itself, comes back online, and sets out to complete its original objective. Despite a meager budget of around $1.5 million and the fact that most of the film takes place inside a single apartment, Hardware manages to feel far bigger than it should. It builds a convincing post-apocalyptic world, suggesting a much larger universe beyond its limited setting. Made for just $500,000, Monsters makes brilliant use of every single dollar. Set several years after aliens have crash-landed on Earth, the film follows a journalist traveling through a dangerous quarantine zone filled with extraterrestrial creatures, escorting his employer's daughter to safety on the other side. With such a tiny budget, the production had to rely entirely on ingenuity. Locations were often used without any official permission, extras were recruited on the spot, and the crew was stripped down to the bare minimum. The visual effects are especially impressive given the circumstances, created using inexpensive, off-the-shelf software on a laptop. Try to avoid the 2014 sequel, but the original Monsters is absolutely worth watching. I didn't try to rank this list by budget, but I still saved Primer for last, almost as if it were number one. And the reason is simple: it was made for $7,000. The plot structure is notoriously complex, often deliberately disorienting, and the film makes no effort to make things easy for the audience. The dialogue is packed with technical language, and there are no apologies for it. This is time travel the hard way, and the confusion is very much part of the experience. To keep costs as low as possible, almost everything was handled by director Shane Carruth himself. Writing, producing, editing, composing the score, and even co-starring. This isn't a movie you put on in the background while doing other things. At times it feels more like a moving puzzle than a traditional film, which might be a drawback for some, but it's also what makes it one of the best, if not the best, independent sci-fi films ever made.